Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host, Simon Conboy. Apologies for the lighting, it got dark quick. Going this a bit later than usual today. Today's episode is another episode in the Cover Who series. For those of you who haven't seen one of these episodes before, I will be discussing a player that I feel somewhat fell from most person's memories since their retirement from the NFL. These are the kind of players that aren't going to ever get into the Hall of Fame. If there was a Hall of Very Good, they'd probably garner some consideration, whether it's because they played for struggling teams, played a position that doesn't necessarily get enough attention, or career was shortened due to injuries. There's a variety of reasons a guy could make this list. Today's episode, we will be focusing on Tennessee Titans long-term left tackle Michael Roos, who was, as any Titans fan will let you know, a very, very good player. Drafted middle of last decade, in 2005, in the second round. Was a very reliable player for the franchise for a decade. How many starts did he get? 148 starts. Missed a chunk of, I believe it was his second last season, 2014. Did his knee in. Ended up retiring the season afterwards. Had microfracture surgery and all that. They'd drafted a replacement in Taylor Lewin, but whilst he was with this team, he was pretty much the epitome of reliability. Whilst he may not have been the most known player, him and, was it David Stewart, the right tackle? Either way, formed one of the best tackle tandems in the NFL for a good period of time, for about 4 or 5 years. People should remember that this team was never exceptional in that time frame, but they did have a pretty stellar offensive line between those two. And Kevin Mawai, for a number of years, of course, paved the way for Chris Johnson to have that fantastic start to his career in Tennessee. Lendell White had some success. A very good run team for his entire tenure. He was a very good pass protector. Played the game. It was a very smooth looking player. Never made things look too difficult. I think he was somewhat overshadowed over the course of his time. Of course, being a Titans player is not the best way to garner national attention. But he only made the one Pro Bowl and the one All-Pro in his career, which I was actually surprised to see when doing the research for this episode. I was expecting to see 2, 3, maybe 4 Pro Bowls in there, because this guy was very, very good for a long time. I would have put him in, for most of his career, probably one of the top 5 or 6 guys in the league at his position. Of course, left tackle, certainly one of the more difficult positions to play. These guys do tend to, especially to play it 10 years at such a consistent level. That's something that is quite rare. I imagine if you were to ask any GM in the league if they could draft a Michael Roos to play the next 10 years at tackle, they would likely take that all day. Was just an incredibly good player. Was good in both the run and the pass game. As I mentioned earlier, this was one of those this Titans team, under Jeff Fisher, was a run-based team for the majority of his, I say the majority, for his tenure with the team. Constantly actually near the top of it. Of course, as I said, Chris Johnson had that wonderful period. You had the first couple of seasons where him and Lendell White were a combination, and the 2,000-yard season. Managed to go 13-3 with Kerry Collins as a quarterback. Managed to make Vince Young look like a viable starter at times. They didn't have great receivers. This was down to great pass protection, a great run game. And say he had some help. Kevin Mawai was an excellent centre. David Stewart was an excellent right tackle. But I do think Roos was probably the best player on that group, and as I say, was a very talented group. So, as I say, this is just one of those guys. This series is primarily intended for, of course, offensive linemen. They're very hard to judge. You don't really have any stats other than sacks allowed, and even then, that can be very, very misleading. As a statistic, this guy had some penalties. That's the nature of that Jeff Fisher team. They were scrappy. They were dirty. You know what you're getting with a Jeff Fisher team. There's going to be some penalties, but as I say, when I'm looking at a left tackle in particular, consistency is something that is absolutely essential. I mean, a good contrast would be, for example, Donald Penn's time in Tampa. He's been exceptional with the Raiders. He was exceptional at times for the Bucks, but you didn't know. It's felt when he was in Tampa like there'd be 3 or 4 games a season where he just wouldn't necessarily be on his game. But you didn't get that with this guy. You know what you're getting week in, week out, and that was high-end offensive tackle play. Incredibly underrated player. Probably wasn't the most dominating athlete you'll ever see at the position, but he certainly fit that team to a T. I mean, a perfect player for that style of offense that they were running. And yeah, just wanted to shed some light on a player that clearly, even during his career, as I say, only the 1 Pro Bowl and the 1 All-Pro nod, paving the way for Chris Johnson that year. I feel like he was somewhat hard done by, to be honest. So yeah, I recommend go back and watch some of those teams, especially that 13-3 season. This was a really good team. You had Albert Hainsworth had an absurd season. Chris Johnson going ham. That was maybe not the most fun team in the world unless you like that style of game. I do. So they were very effective, and as I say, keep an eye on this guy. He was a fantastic player. So there you have it. That's this week's episode of Cover Who. As always, if you want to get in touch, do so. Comment section below. Find us on Facebook, Cover Zero. Find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. Be more than happy to talk ball with anyone. Cover Who's one of those series. I've got a lot of names planned for this, but I'm always willing to consider suggestions from other people. There has to be some names that I have forgotten. So if you want me to consider doing an episode on a player, give us a shout. I'll be more than happy to consider it, and I'll let you know if it's something I will do. As always, thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, I recommend checking out some more of the shows. Got the QB Quandary series that's got a few episodes in it now. Draft reviews, there'll be season previews coming up, and this sort of stuff you'd expect. And my reviews of the top 100 player lists are going up weekly at the moment. So yeah, definitely recommend checking those out if you've enjoyed this. As always, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure as always. And have a great night, and go Bucks.